Alrighty, we've got this week's featured league match between eenzian and Skumpy for Division D3. Let's take a look at the standing. Where's D3? Okay, so one match in, eenzian has quite a nice win record. Obviously, a lot of season left to go. Skumpy has played two matches and is sitting at 42%, so probably looking at a win to make sure they avoid demotion. Will be pretty important there. Let's see what we got for the first kingdom. Okay, so draw emissary. Footpad could potentially interact with some of this stuff. Looks like the only gaining you're doing in the buy phase is procession. That makes procession look a little bit better because you draw a card whenever you gain something. Sorry, in the action phase. I think I said buy phase. Footpad triggers only in the action phase. Hireling is also draw. For villages, there's village green. Not a whole lot of ways to discard it unless your opponent is playing a footpad, and then you can pitch it to avoid the attack, I think, is the only way to discard village green here, but it's still a village normally. Um, Crashing, we got Clan and Shaman, plus buy Fishmonger, Abundance. Okay. Hmm. A lot going on. Feels like a kingdom there ought to be some major synergy here, but I'm not seeing it. Village green doesn't have anything super phenomenal. Is there a way to play a procession at the start of your turn? I don't think so. So procession is buffed a little bit by footpad because you'll draw a card whenever you gain something off procession, but it's also nerfed a little bit by shaman because if you trash a good card, it'll be in the trash on the start of your opponent's next turn, and they can gain it back from the trash. Not only getting a good thing, but also that means they get to forego gaining a junk card at the start of their turn. So you don't really want to process any good action cards unless you're doing like two at a time, and then you could regain the second one on your turn. If you could play procession somehow at the start of your turn, I don't know, like setting aside with farm hands or something, then you could process something, get it into the trash, gain it for your start of turn game. But I don't think there's a way to do that here unless I'm missing something. How to open? I would think plan Shaman, buy Shaman. Looks like the most obvious thing. You put the crashing token on Shaman and you buy it turn two. Especially as player one, that means you're getting to get a junk card into your opponent's shuffle before they even shuffle their deck. Yeah, it looks like they both agree with that. In general, in Shaman Kingdoms, trashing is super important. You don't want to get behind on junk, both because you're constantly getting in a stream of junk out of the trash, so you need to trash even more aggressively to get that. But also, trashing your own cards is like a junking attack on your opponent. At least in the early game, when there's nothing in the trash, you want to make sure that you put at least one card in the trash each turn, so your opponent is forced to gain something. So getting the trashing early and often is important here. So, for example, here, Skumpy finds a Shaman for their turn three hand. I would expect them to trash something here and probably buy a real thing. I'm not sure what that is. And then turn four, buy another Shaman just to get one thing in the trash. Trashing at least one thing every turn is more important than like trashing a bunch of things on one turn. You just want to make sure there's always a card in the trash for your opponent to gain. Oh, that's that's actually kind of funny. I didn't think about it, but the fact that you gain a card off of Shaman, the start of your turn counts as your action phase, so that triggers Footpad. You get a free plus one card. I mean, not that that neutralizes Shaman's attack. Obviously, gaining an estate still isn't great, even if you are getting plus one card off of it, but it mitigates it a bit. What do we want as the first five cost card? My intuition is Order of Astrologers. Is that right? What do you think about this? Your discard pile has one card. You've got five cards in play. If you buy a emissary right now, you'll have seven cards in that shuffle. Yeah, just top deck a non-emissary card, like the Shaman or something, and you're pretty darn likely to trigger a shuffle with your emissary on the following turn. They go with Haggler instead. Haggler seems like it will be good here. Wouldn't mind gaining a five and a four or a six and five. Uh, but you also have Gather for that, which is pretty decent, getting a bunch of stuff at various costs. And Haggler, I think a little bit early to me. Like I was just saying, you gotta stay on top of trashing in a Shaman Kingdom. Emissaries drawing you cards, making sure you find your trashers. Haggler helps you gain a good card and a Shaman. Yeah, that's probably the second thing you gain off the Haggler. Like you play the Haggler, you buy whatever you actually want, and then gain a Shaman for the Haggler effect to get a card in the trash. Buy Hireling, gain Shaman. Looks correct to me. Maybe you can consider Emissary instead as well. Emissary Shaman. Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna say Hireling Shaman. Final answer. Well, okay, we're halfway there. Yeah, I think that's the right choice. So it seems like eenzian has been on the back foot, right? Their turn three, they didn't get to trash a card, trash two cards in fact. They're only hitting like two money. Turn four, they're also not hitting five quite yet. Uh, it does seem like a particularly nasty kingdom to be player two in, right? Your opponent gets to trash immediately on turn two, give you a jump card before you shuffle, and trigger your shuffle for you. I think puts you just in a much worse starting position. Let's see. Scumpy's got five. What do you buy with five? Not clear. Emissary? I think the cards you're going to most want in the near future are probably emissaries and village greens for the most part. Gaining those in some order. I think emissary and village green are the two cards I'll be thinking about clicking here. The fact that they're not playing all their copper suggests maybe they're going to buy another shaman. I don't think that's as important. There's already stuff in the trash. Second hack, this is so incredibly greedy. Deck is full of gainers. Uh, I don't like that second hack one bit. They nonetheless, I think, are just going to be way ahead, regardless, because they've hit five, six, five. Meanwhile, I think Indian has just gotten their first $5 card. Hasn't even seen it yet. Fishmonger, okay. Fishmonger is pretty good at getting you to five, because like whenever you have a $4 hand like this one, you can just choose to play Fishmonger on that turn. I got seven. Some anti-synergy between Haggler and Gather. Haggler only triggers on cards that you bought. So if you buy Gather and then gain cards off of Gather, you don't get the Haggler effect. So you could have had a 3, 4, and a 5. They go for a 4 and a 6 instead. What are these bottom six cards that eenzian has? There appear to be two estates down there. And I think two shamans. I guess it's two estates, two shamans, two coppers. Could be wrong about that. Uh, the question I assume is being contemplated right now is, do you play this fishmonger this turn? There's a haggler down there. So maybe it's two estates, two shamans, one copper, and one haggler? Yeah, if there's a haggler down there, you definitely play the fishmonger now. So the fishmonger is on the bottom of the deck. You can't see the card backs, but all the shadow cards have a unique card back that says when you're shuffling, you always put this in the very bottom of your deck. So it's six cards followed by a fishmonger. Uh, you don't play it this turn, you play it next turn, but next turn you are going to have a haggler in hand and can't play both. And you don't want to go two turns without playing it, because then you're going to draw it into your actual hand, and that's just a waste. You'd never want to draw it in your hand and play it from your hand when you could play it straight from your deck. They go for Village Green plus second Fishmonger. Interesting. Finally, we take an Emissary. Better late than never. Probably this is just Emissary plus Village Green for eenzian, I would think. Yeah. That's Skumpy, you probably want to start thinking about plus buy soon-ish. I don't think you need it this turn. You already got Hagglers for gains, plus there's Gather around. At some point, you'll want to gain an Abundance or a Fishmonger off of one of those two things. For the moment, I'd say probably just another Hireling and another Village Green looks good. This game will benefit a lot from a $3 action card. Would not mind adding a Procession and processing some of the Shamans. Uh, get them out of your deck, your opponent can gain it, but by the state of the game, you don't need a million of them to stay thin. Yeah, Hireling Village Green makes sense. Procession Procession used to be able to play duration cards. Non-duration got added to it because it used to be the case that when you played Procession and trashed a duration card, you still got the duration effect. Like you process a wharf, you play it two times, then you got this phantom +4 cards coming in on the following turn that you just have to remember because there's no cards in play to remind you. And so Procession got non-duration to avoid tracking problems, particularly in real life games where that's more of a concern. Uh, now, so that happened a long time ago. I don't know, like 2020, maybe, give or take. Um, Now, as of early 2025, the rules for durations have changed to solve this more general problem of phantom duration effects that aren't being tracked by any cards. And now the rule is if you did something like Procession a duration and the duration is not in play, any future turn effects of duration cards are canceled if they're not in play to track that effect. So now, even if Session didn't say non-duration, it wouldn't be so much of a problem. Like you Procession a Village Green and you set it aside for next turn, but the Village Green gets trashed, then you just don't get the effect. Um, so Procession actually could drop the non-duration clause now and not be so much of a problem. Yeah, Procession Tide Pools would be an example of where that's a positive. Because Tide Pools gives you the good thing now and the bad thing next turn. So you get to play it immediately and then trash it and you don't resolve the bad effect on the following turn. You can still do something like that with, say, Throne Room on Tide Pools plus Way of the Turtle or something, where you play the Tide Pools, draw three cards, set it aside, and then you don't resolve the discard effect next turn. All right, we got seven. With two Hagglers, there's not a whole lot of reason to buy Gather here. You gain a 3, 4, and a 5, or three of more or less whatever you want. Emissary, Village Green, Fishmonger seems reasonable. You could think about a procession at some point soon. I think if I wanted to add procession, I'd like to add maybe two on the same turn, and then you play procession on procession, and then trash, say, a shaman and a haggler. Uh, and then the haggler gains you a hireling, which you could then get and play on the same turn. Now there's a procession and a haggler in the trash. Your opponent will get one next turn, but you get the other one back on your turn. And then you just double your haggler effect and got a shaman out of your deck. I think I like that two processions now. We'll see if they go for that. Certainly, it's not a necessary card, but I think it looks viable right around this point. Province already. That pile's that low? No, I'm gonna say that looks premature to me. Shaman and Village Green are low, and Haggler can pile things pretty fast, but if your opponent only has the one copy of Haggler, they're not gonna pile out next turn. I don't think that's a realistic threat. And one of the big downsides of buying Province here is the difference between buying a 4 cost and buying a 3 cost. I think, or sorry, buying a 4 cost and buying a 5 or a 6 cost is massive. Most of the cards you want here cost 4, 5, and 6. If you buy a 4 with two Hagglers in play, you're gaining two Fishmonger. That's okay, but it's not a particularly good card. Um, Whereas if you're buying a 5 or a 6 and gaining 4s or 5s off of it, that looks a lot better. So I don't like that Province by one bit. But it must be said that Skumpy still seems miles ahead. I think that this game has basically just been player one coasting off of a huge player one advantage the entire time. Uh, okay, so here is eenzian. You could trash a second copper. So if you do, you're only hitting four. No, you have two actions. You could trash this copper and play a fishmonger, and then buy like a 5 and a 4. They don't want to trash any of the coppers. Don't you dare. Oh, no, not you too. I mean, they're already up a creek, but like if you're both just going in on the province, there's zero chance that you win this. Your deck is never getting any better. Your deck is worse at the moment. I think Skumpy buying a province there was attempting to throw Enzi on a lifeline, like, hey, look, I'm going to build an unambitious deck that doesn't accomplish as much as it could. Probably they would most likely win anyway, but there's at least a chance that Enzian outbuilds them and does more in the long run. If you're both just buying a province a turn, that's not going to favor the person who's currently behind. I don't like. I just like that province by even more than Scumpy's province. Not to mention you had to forego trashing two coppers just to get a province in your deck. You just had three junk cards to your deck, effectively. Hmm. This is going to be a sad Shaman gain. Indian's right at the end of a shuffle. You'd love to play an emissary right now and trigger the shuffle with your emissary. But unfortunately, they're going to be forced to gain a card from the trash, and that's going to trigger a shuffle before they can play the emissary. So here's an example of an interaction people often get wrong. Uh, Indian is right at the end of a shuffle, discarded two village greens. If you choose to play both village greens uh, for the next turn effect, where you get plus one card, plus two actions next turn, it'll work out just fine. But if, for example, you're resolving that first village green and you choose, I'll play it now and draw one card now, the second village green is going to fail to activate because the first village green is going to trigger a shuffle. Now, where's that second village green that you're trying to play? it just got shuffled into your deck. So even though you discarded two village greens, it would normally be able to play both of them. If you play the first one, draw a card, trigger a shuffle, and then you lose your second village green somewhere into your deck, you're not going to get to play it. And I've seen a million and one bug reports and rules clarifications asking, why can't I play all my village greens? It's because you triggered a shuffle and lost the other ones. And if you have two village greens and you want to play one now for plus cards and one later, you could always uh, duration the first one, set it aside for the next turn, and then draw with the second one, and then that's fine. Order matters there. In this case, it didn't matter because they just decide both for next turn. Once again, the province buy just looks pointlessly painful on yourself. Uh, 12 money. I guess in this turn, at least they have coffers, so they could spin some favors and buy a 5. A duchy? Are you worried they're going to pile out from a 6-point deficit with one haggler on the deck? Why do you need a duchy right now? Yeah, emissary and two processions sounds a lot better than what they're doing. Like if Skumpy just believed in themselves a little bit more, uh, and added, say, two processions, not even that turn, but the previous turn when they bought their first province. You add some processions to your deck. You play procession on procession, then procession on hireling. You play that hireling twice. You gain a third hireling off of the procession that you just trashed. Now you've got like four hireling plays. You're probably piling out like within a turn or so. Please don't buy a province. At this point, I think the writing's on the wall. Um, but just on principle, please don't buy a province. Ah. Looks like Skumpy is quite over-terminaled here. I, Ideally, you really want to play these fishmongers. If you don't play the fishmongers now, they're going to be in your starting hand. And fishmonger in your starting hand is like quality of an herbalist. Um, but we don't have actions to play both the fishmongers and all the terminal action cards in hand. Let's see. Is there a win this turn? Probably not, right? We've got two hagglers. What will be the easiest piles to pile out on? Emissary and Shaman? You have to buy two emissaries and not a haggler. Two emissaries and a hireling would win, right? Maybe they have it 16 money? Yeah, they got a pile up. This is a win. Um, buy one hireling, gain two emissaries. Buy one emissary, gain two shamans. Buy one emissary, gain one shaman. I think Wandering Winder is listening. Uh, and they've got 6, 10, 19, 22, 24 money. Yeah, they have way more than enough to win. If they miss this, that would be a shame. You didn't need to play that footpad. You had enough money to pile out without playing that footpad. That was totally unnecessary. The province bio is concerning, but it looks like we are in fact piling out here. Okay, game one to Skumpy. It was indeed a very friendly player one board. Okay, game two. Ooh, a rush plus populate doesn't work quite as well as you think it does. You can choose the order of the cards you gain from populate. So if you bought rush and bought populate, you can play one of the cards. But like you couldn't click rush 10 times and buy populate and play all the things. That'd be fun though if you could. So for draw, we have emissary and sea witch. Patrician potentially draws. Herald can draw cards. Sybil can draw cards. For villages, Mountain Village and Herald, I think, are the only villages here. Yeah. Fellowship of Scribes is also technically draw from a small hand size. You get the favors from Emissary here. Crashing looks like the big limitation here, right? Yeah. So Acolyte can turn estates into golds, which isn't even getting your deck any thinner. And aside from that, there's no trashing here at all, which means curses probably hurt a lot. Uh, so Sea Witch looks pretty significant. And then plus buy, you have Gold Mine, Herb Gatherer. Artisan gaining a forum would give you plus buy. Okay, so yeah, I think the early goal of this game is probably to play Sea Witch a bunch of times. I think the curses probably matter too much here to forego. You've got a lot of sifting and such, like forum can get you around your junk, but the sifting is actually hurt pretty bad by Mountain Village. If Mountain Village is the main village and you sift past your junk with Sea Witch's effect or Forum's effect. You have to pitch the junk or pick the junk back up whenever you play your mountain villages. That's pretty unfortunate. So how do you open here? Double silver or silver and herb gatherer with the goal of getting to 5 and buying a sea witch. Herb gatherer is terminal, so if you line it up with your sea witch on future shuffles, it's going to be a bit worse. The upside is like if you find an herb gatherer turn 3, you can play a silver, uh, pitch the rest of your shuffle, and then potentially find your sea witch sooner. Let's see, what are the players saying? Part of that was the estate ad before the first shuffle. Yeah, I think that was a big deal. Uh, well, always a world where you hit 5 on turn 2 in every game, but you know what I mean. Yes, if I realize the draw, I could go for the 2-cost Fisherwoman, but not sure with Trashing Prio. Um, no, I don't think that even like even if you wanted to, I don't think player 2 can really play around it. You could buy Fishmonger turn 1, knowing that your opponent's gonna trigger a shuffle for you, but then the downside is you bought a Fishmonger turn 1 instead of doing Plan Shaman yourself. I think the problem is you kind of gotta open with Plan and Shaman just because it's so much better than anything else as a starting buy. But then your opponent's gonna do the thing before you have a chance to get a Fishmonger in your deck. Okay, so they both open double silver. I think I prefer silver herb gatherer. I think the difference isn't big. Um, I don't want a bunch of silvers in my deck long term. I think that's more of a concern to me than having two terminals in my deck long term. Uh, and they both buy Mountain Village Sea Witch on the next two shuffles. Okay, or on the next shuffle, I should say, or on the next two turns. Mountain Village could be good or bad here. The optimistic case for Mountain Village is if you find, say, 5 money in your turn 5 hand, buy another Sea Witch, you can pick it up with your Mountain Village, play it as soon as turn 6. The downside case for Mountain Village is like you play your Sea Witch turn 5, and then you pitch a bunch of junk. Mountain Village is forced to pick up your junk. 6, probably Artisan, I think. Rushing any of the 4 costs doesn't do very much for you here. Yeah, Artisan makes sense. Like this right here would be a terrible hand to find Mountain Village in. You just pick up a state or a curse from your discard. Here we have 6. Could be a second Artisan. Uh, that might be a little bit greedy. Could be you could rush a Herald and pray for the 1 in 8 chance that you hit your Artisan and get to play it off the top of your deck. I don't know what you buy here. Oh, worth noting. Yeah, second Artisan's fine. Emissary and Herb Gatherer have a little bit of synergy. You can play an Herb Gatherer, discard your whole deck, and then follow it up with an Emissary, and then the Emissary is guaranteed to activate. So they gain a Sea Witch. Another option would have been gaining a second Mountain Village and picking up the Sea Witch that's in your discard and playing that one. I'm not sure if that's better. Actually, yeah, that order is probably better, right? Isn't there an Artisan down here? Okay, well, they, or if you just get lucky, I guess that solves the problem too. The upside of first Artisan gaining a Mountain Village and then the Mountain Village picking up a Sea Witch and playing it is you have an extra action. And then if you draw your other Artisan off your Sea Witch, you're not drawing it dead and you can still play it. As it so happens, they just find the Artisan off of their Herald and get to play it for free anyway. And now, presumably, they play the Sea Witch. There's obviously some benefits to. Yeah, I think they're overthinking this. Um, but how many bad cards are down there? Maybe that shuffle's worth avoiding triggering. Let's see. So there would be they pick up one of the cards. There'd be one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 cards in the shuffle. You would draw 2 of the cards from the shuffle. There'd be 6 cards on top. But then you'd have 2 Sea Witches in play. I think it works out the way you want it to work out, which is you top deck like just enough bad cards so that when your Sea Witches come in, they pitch all the bad cards and you give out the curses sooner. But yeah, I can see the logic of I just don't want to trigger a shuffle because there's much bad stuff down there. I think the fact that you would have 2 Sea Witches in play, which is 4 extra cards of draw, is probably enough to justify doing that. Herb Gatherer, I presume. Yeah, I think it's worth clicking populate here if you ever hit 10. You're getting a bunch of terminal action cards, but you're just getting a bunch of stuff in total, and it comes with like 1.5 villages. Herald is a village some of the time, but not reliably in a kingdom with no trashing. Judging by the scores, it looks like they've both played Sea Witch twice so far. eenzian going for a third Sea Witch. These heralds have been remarkably accurate. And a fourth Sea Witch. And we're immediately punished for it. Hmm. Third artisan would be a lot of artisans. Nothing else is super jump out to me either. Definitely not a gold. That is not the right answer under any circumstances. If you want a gold, you better rotate the August pile and rush an acolyte to trash one of your estates. That is the acceptable way to get a gold here. Buying gold on any board for that matter. But yeah, you got gold mine, you got acolyte, you got better ways to gain a gold. You have a ton of junk in a kingdom where you just need to be clicking draw in villages as much as humanly possible. I was about to try to rationalize it of like, well, I've got this one herb gatherer in my deck, and it just needs to have a really good target. And if I've got a gold, I can at least always play it whenever I find my herb gatherer. But they're not even the player who has the herb gatherer. Not sure shuffling all those curses in was worth the $2. What did I miss? Okay, so they were at the start of their turn, and they played an herb gatherer. Um, so if they have a bunch of curses in their discard, and the rest of the cards come up in the deck are good, you don't want to hit your deck and draw a new shuffle because now there's four curses that are getting shuffled into the rest of your cards. They ended up with 6 money. It looks like. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, if you had four anyway, a lot of the cards you really want here cost four, like Mountain Village and Herald. You could have just bought one of those and not played the Herb Gatherer. I think it should have been a forum. Are you referring to the turn where they bought a gold? I think forum could be a fine buy there. Emissary also looks quite good right around now. Okay, the quality of this turn is going to hinge a lot on what this Herald sees. Yeah, if we're judging by the previous Heralds, this Herald's probably going to work just fine. Yep. This deck is like less than half action cards, probably, and this Herald has managed to hit in every single clutch circumstance. Emissary is not that difficult to activate. You just play an Herb Gatherer. Herb Gatherer is a card that's pronounced quite differently, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on. How'd they say it over there? Hub Gather. I can't even. Nobody pronounces all the letters. Uh, some people leave out the H, others the R. Ooh, fun stuff. Yeah, I think if you hit 10, you gotta click populate. I think it's legitimately goodbye, but it's also just such a fun thing to click. All right, throwing in the towel. That looked pretty reasonable. Um, can't beat the sniper heralds. 2-0 for player one. Going into game three. What do we got here? So, for draw, there's Magpie, which can draw your crowns. That or just Watchtower. Watchtower looks like the most reliable draw, so probably you're trying to do some draw to X thing with action-based payload. Souk, for example, is very good payload for a draw to X deck. Play a bunch of like squires and towns and crowns for villages, then play a bunch of Souks, draw a bunch of cards with Watchtower, play more Souks, something like that. Um, Magpie Souk is cool. What's the interaction there? That's going over my head. Um, yes, we got draw with Watchtower, a bunch of villages, trashing is Junk Dealer or Souk's on gain effect, or Secluded Shrine, and then plus buy is Souk, Squire, Candlestick Maker, Town. Probably usually taking plus two actions off of Town and Squire. Um, okay. So how to open? I tend to click Exploration by default. It's just usually the case that at least once in the game, the one coffer and one villager are quite worth it. For example, here, a number you're really looking to hit is 5 money with 2 cards left in hand, and something like exploration plus silver seems fairly likely. Like you draw a silver, 3 coppers, and 1 estate. You'd be really happy to have 1 extra copper off your exploration because then you can play silver and 2 of the coppers and buy a Souk and trash 2 cards. Koji says Magpie Silver. Yeah, Magpie is the other card I think you would consider on 4 here. Just in general, Magpie is very strong, and it's a card you want to open early because it multiplies. Um, Admittedly, this is not the most important kingdom ever for Magpie. Like, eventually, I don't really plan on having many treasures in the deck. It probably have crowns that it can draw, um, but the short-term benefit's pretty big. See, I could see Magpie Silver. I could see Exploration in Silver. You could do something like Exploration or Magpie, and then on turn two, buy like a Squire and then save a card, and then you're hoping to hit the big Souk trash on turn three. Yeah, what about Exploration plus Squire plus saving an estate for your turn three hand? And you've got a coffer, you've got a 6 card hand. I think you're pretty likely to hit five and trash 2 cards, which sounds really nice. That's my new favorite answer. Squire is not super important early or anything, but it's a card I'm gonna want, and it costs 2, so you can afford to save while buying it. Oh, I see. You're implying that there was more of an anti-synergy. Like Magpie gives you a big handful of coppers, and then Soup doesn't like that. Yeah. Um, we'll see what they go with. Oh, I missed the comment earlier, but someone pointed out Shrine plus Watchtower is fun. Yeah, Shrine. I don't think I want a secluded Shrine just because I don't want that many treasures that badly. Like you can activate it on Crown eventually, but that's just like doing the Souk thing with extra steps, buying a 5 to trash 2 cards from your hand. Um, the interaction here is like you could play a secluded shrine, buy a copper, crash the copper you just bought to your watchtower, and then still get the trashing effect off of shrine. Probably more fancy than good. All right, Scumpy goes for exploration. Exploration Magpie is also an option. I don't think I like Exploration plus Magpie very much. The main reason I'm thinking about Exploration early is conserving that one extra copper to get a good souk buy with two trashes on the next shuffle. And then that opening is blowing the copper, or the copper rather, early. Or likewise with Silk Merchant. I see a lot of people open Silk Merchant at another four cost. I'm not usually a big fan of that because I think it squanders a lot of Silk Merchants really benefit. Sometimes it can be right, but uh, I tend to like go into the next shuffle with a copper. Skumpy hit the next suit trash. Yeah, let's see what did they open. Did they do the? Oh, they did the right opening. Exploration save Squire is the opening I think ultimately looked best. And the eenzian had the 5-2. Yeah, on 5-2, I think buy a junk dealer is definitely correct. And I think I like saving over buying any of the two cost cards here. I think you eventually want squires and maybe candlesticks, but not enough to add them early. Saving a card means you're more likely to hit five again next shuffle, and you're less likely to bottom deck your junk dealers. I think both of those openings look correct to me. TSM over Squire Moyo. Where's Moyo? Did Moyo leave a comment somewhere? I don't see Moyo in the chat. Moyo, Moyo, do you have me blocked on here? How tragic. Hmm. You missed a few turns. Let me get caught up. So Skumpy did hit the nice turn three trash with Sook, and then bought a Watchtower. Both of those make sense. eenzian buys a Magpie turn three and a second junk dealer. Hmm. How do I feel about the second junk dealer? Seems okay. You could add a crown earlier, and then play your one junk dealer more times. Certainly don't want two junk dealers long term. I think I would think about something like that maybe. It kind of looks like Scumpy's in the lead. Um, Everything they've done has worked out the way you'd want it to, which is the opening led to a nice early Souk trash killing two estates, and then they keep finding Squire plus Souk plus Watchtower early on, which is exactly what you want your deck to be doing here. Let's see. So this Souk is worth two money if you play it. It's probably worth it. Have I blocked him? I'm calling BS on that. I would never. Maybe I would, but I don't think I did. Uh, what did they end up doing? I got distracted again. So they had a Watchtower in hand, which looks lovely as far as sculpting your next turn hand goes. Oh, so they saved the Watchtower instead. I was expecting you to leave the Watchtower in your hand. Yeah, this is just straight up a mistake. Um, Even if they wanted to do like exactly the set of buys, you could do this in the reverse order. If you buy the Souk and the Squire first, trashing two coppers, and then save Watchtower with your last money, you can use the Watchtower, which would still be in your hand at that point, to top deck the Squire and the Souk. Guarantee you have another Squire Souk Watchtower starting hand. They definitely had enough buys for that. Yeah, I think they just overlooked the Watchtower top deck effect there. What is the Magpie for? Um, I don't think Magpie is very important here, but it's just a card where, like, if you had one of them, all of a sudden you have 10 of them, and then if it occasionally draws you a copper or a crown or something, it's already justified itself. Looks like Skumpy needs a few more villages here. I'm gonna guess, let's see. I one more souk looks good. Trash two coppers, and then I think town plus crown to add two more villages to the deck. Normally, if you have a card in hand and uh, any amount of money, saving is pretty automatic. Uh, Converting one coin to one extra card is just really good. In a deck where you're trying to draw to X, having a larger starting hand isn't necessarily good. And if the card you're putting in your starting hand is like a terminal stop card, it'd be worse than nothing to have an extra souk in your starting hand. So I think I agree with not saving the souk there. Magpie. So eenzian is super thin, but without a lot to show for it. Yeah, maybe maybe the magpie, like if nothing else, it gives you a way to play your junk dealer later. Seems like Scumpy's ahead. Alrighty, so I vote. Let's not save this watchtower until we've bought a few things and top deck some nice stuff. Like, what if you top deck Squire, Crown, Suit, and then you save your watchtower? Isn't that going to be a much better starting hand? Yeah, I could easily see Scumpy winning next turn off of a good draw. You add some villages here, and then if you can afford to play a few more of these squires for plus buy, you'll have more than 31 next turn and way more than 6 buys. So I would think something like Squire, Crown, Souk, top decking all of those, save the Watchtower, and then buy like two more crowns. Distant lands? Is your opponent threatening to pile out? I don't think so. Their deck was just. What did it hit last turn? They bought a single crown last turn. Why are you? You don't need points right now. I don't like those one bit. You could have had like, the perfect. It annoys me when they don't uh, intentionally top deck like the perfect 5 card starting hand. And they just happen to draw it anyway. This is about the best possible draw you could ask for, and most of these cards were just drawn off the top purely randomly. You didn't deserve this hand. I mean, you could have had this hand if you crafted it for yourself. But left it up to fate. So yeah, here you could play Squire for action. No, no, you can't do it. I think it's play Squire for actions and crown both the Sooks. That doesn't quite work. You could do Crown, Squire, Sook. Play the last Sook, play the Watchtower. And you're still making a huge amount of money there. I think, yeah, a win this turn for Skumpy is, I think, imminently possible. Um, Depends perhaps on what eenzian buys, but like they can't really afford to not touch any of the low piles because those are all the cards you need. Oh, if the Magpie auto pile was possible. Um, I don't think so. Is it? Magpie is more awkward to auto pile than rats. How does it work with Watchtower? Can you auto pile with Watchtower? Does that change the situation at all? Let's say you had two Magpies in your hand and action card, two from the top, and then a Watchtower in your hand. You play the Magpie. You play your first Magpie. You draw a card. You reveal an action. Okay, yeah, you can autopilot, right? So you have two Magpies and a Watchtower in your hand. You play your Magpie. You draw some card. You reveal an action card. You gain a Magpie. Use the Watchtower to top deck that Magpie. Now the top two cards of your deck are Magpie on top, followed by some other action. You play the other Magpie that's in your hand. It draws the new Magpie, reveals that same action card, gains you Magpie with your top deck. So yeah, if you find two Magpies and a Watchtower in hand, and any card except for the crown has to be a non-treasure card. Is two from the top of your deck. Then it auto piles because you can always top deck the Magpie with the Watchtower. Although I'm not convinced you want to auto pile the Magpies right now, given that eenzian is behind and emptying a pile means you're closer to getting piled on one. What do you buy with your five buys? The trouble is, I think eenzian still needs to add more stuff to the deck, like crowns and sukes and squires and whatnot, and watchtowers for that matter. Right? They only have the one watchtower. It's not a lot of draw, but piles are also a concern, and you don't really want to be taking a province here. Province hurts the suit deck a humongous amount. Like if you're playing suit like five times, and there's one extra card in your hand for every one of those suit plays, that province is like -5 money. Um, Plus, province is also bad in a watchtower deck. If you have green cards gunking up your hand, drawing to six is effectively drawing you fewer cards each time. So yeah, taking a province is a humongous hit to the quality of this deck, both in terms of its draw and its output. Uh, I think I would kind of click the cards that you need fairly aggressively, knowing that if your opponent's turn goes optimally, they'll probably just pile out and win, and just hope that they have a lackluster turn, like they can't find another watchtower, or they can't find enough abilities or something, and pray they have at least a partial dud and can't pile out on you. Just because, I don't know, if you score early, either only scenario where this wins is they have a dud turn anyway, or you're just going to lose over the long term because your deck is getting worse now, while theirs is already better and improving. Gonna top deck another Squire? No, you can't top deck the other Squire because the Watchtower's already been saved. This is a case where they couldn't, even if they wanted to, you couldn't switch the order around because if you bought Squire and then tried to save Watchtower, you'd be out of buys and wouldn't be able to buy the last save. So you have to click save before using your last buy of the turn because it'll give you the buy back as long as you save early. Not clear to me if you buy another one of the twos. Probably so. They only have the one Watchtower, and if that card's not in the starting hand, then it's not as free as it looks like. Are they maybe considering buying a second Watchtower and top decking it so they have two total Watchtowers? They clicked undo and did the same thing. I imagine they were thinking, oh, I'll save. The thing I was discussing a second ago was like, oh, I'm going to buy a Candlestick Maker. I should just top deck it. Let me undo, top deck it, and then click save. And they realized, wait, I can't do that. I need to have an extra buy left over to be able to do save last. Okay, let's see if we can win here. If you can play both distant lands, you'll have a points lead. And then the cheapest pileout's going to cost you 36 money and 9 buys. Buys are probably going to be the bigger limitation than money here, I would guess. Are they hitting 9 buys with all this? Those bottom 8 have 1 Watchtower, 1 distant lands. I think the rest of it's all good stuff. So probably they're getting there. Is this enough? You can play the distant lands, play the Souk, play the Watchtower. Yeah, that'll win. So not the Watchtower, the Squire. Um, I mean, probably you can play the Watchtower too. I think those bottom 2 cards are also good cards worth drawing. I'm not sure exactly what they are. Um, but there's for sure a guaranteed win in hand. Play the distant lands, play Squire for plus buy, play Souk for money. You'll have 9 total buys. You'll have more than 36 money, and then you can buy out Souk Crown Squire with a points lead. I also did not notice they had 3 distant lands apparently. Yeah, they bought a third one. That's a lot of distant lands. I mean, it worked out fine here. They managed to draw anyway. Um, the fact that they're clicking slowly makes me think that they are resolving the watchtower each time. There's 2 ways around that. One is if you're in the game, you can right click watchtower and there's an autoplay option, and you can just set it to never top deck, and then you can just click all these cards without being bothered by the watchtower interaction. Alternatively, they could have just bought a Souk first and trashed the watchtower from their hand so they wouldn't get prompted on any future clicks, and then you could pile out faster. Okay, interesting. So the only draw here is Journey. You can make tons of money, so you can basically have 10 cards worth of draw each turn if you put 4 money towards second turn. I guess Quartermaster is kind of sort of draw, not with very good targets here though. Um, but you can increase your hand size by putting a card into it at the start of the turn. Got a bunch of decent looking fives. Uh, Coven's best target, I think, is either Vampire or Flagship, both of which have 3 types. So Coven looks pretty good. Sorry, not Coven. Courtier. I meant Courtier. Courtier looks pretty good. Is Coven any good here? I'm gonna say I'm not sure. I think this kingdom might be too fast for Coven. Like you're not building big, but I think this could get to hitting 8 consistently very early. Um, Iris asks, Journey is draw. I would say so. You're spending 4 money to draw 5 extra cards from your deck. Like you can convert 2 silvers into +5 cards +1 action. It's a pretty good trade. Um, what was it? Yeah, so I imagine something with like Courtier and Flagships and maybe Vampire. buys out provinces before the curses from Coven drop. I think I wouldn't take Coven here. There's just too many other good 5 cost cards. I want more. It's more like filtering. You mean like four? I wouldn't consider Journey to me is closer to a draw card than it is to a card like Forum. Anyways, yeah, I think I want a few courtiers, some flagships, maybe Vampire, and then start buying provinces, something like that. Yeah, I could also see taking a quartermaster at some point or two, getting flagships to hand. How do you open? I think some combination of flagship, raise, and silver is obvious. I'm gonna say raise plus flagship looks best to me. I can imagine putting a silver in there over one of those two cards. Flagship raise maybe could get you to a good mint hand early. Like supposing you so raise is not getting you to five on its own. Like if you have a hand of raise 3 coppers in an estate, you trash the estate. At most, you're drawing one more copper, and then you're uh you're not you're not hitting five. Let's say you played a flagship on turn three, then you raise turn four. You play the raise, you trash one estate, then you pop the raise, you draw 5 coppers, you buy an early mint. Is an early mint good? I'm not sure. But I can see that getting you there. Yeah, I think raise flagship looks reasonable. There's only a few cards here that cost less than five, but I think any of them except for Villa look defensible. All right, first five. Hmm. Quartermaster, I think. Could see a case for Vampire, which will gain you a Quartermaster. I could see Upgrade. One of these three. I think my vote is for Quartermaster. Koji agrees. I think in the cases where you have Vampire and you have another 5 cost card you want, question is like how much do you want the bat? Like if I'm just getting the Vampire to get the 5 cost card anyway, you might as well get it directly and play it sooner. But if you want the bat for trashing, well then you take the Vampire first. And I think you could do without the bat here. I just clean up all the coppers at once with one good mint buy, maybe. All right, eenzian does go for the Vampire. I think that's okay, but I think I would just go for the Quartermaster directly, and try to line up a good copper hand. Actually, you know what I overlooked that makes mint even better? Journey. Let's say you have 4 coppers in a hand, you buy Journey, then next turn you hit 5 and you buy Mint. You trash the coppers from both the Journey, the turn where you bought Journey and the turn where you took the Journey because they stay in play. I don't think Mint would have been a better buy on the 3 copper hand. That's not trashing a whole lot of cards. Yeah, I think Mint looks like a good card here, just not on that specific turn. Yeah, I thought Quartermaster, Upgrade, and Vampire were the 3 things I'd be deliberating between. This looks like a great turn to not play this raise. and buy Journey for eenzian. Then I don't even know what's down there, but you're probably hitting. Well, actually, are you hitting 5 next turn? What is down there? Maybe you're not hitting 5. No, they got a vampire. You buy Journey here. You gain a mint off of your vampire, and then you're gonna trash like all your coppers. Right? That works. I guess alternatively, you could pop the raise, hope to find an estate, because there's 2 estates down there. And then your second play of the raise is gonna find an estate, and you trash the estate, and then maybe you draw into your vampire or something. How exactly? What's the question? They do go for the journey. So I think you play just the copper here, yeah, and you don't play the silver, and use the vampire to gain a mint, and then you trash all these coppers. Yeah, I like where Eenzian's deck is at now. Uh, so if you play this flagship, play the silver, buy a journey, play the bat, trashing the estate, you gain a vampire, then you take another turn, you play the vampire, and you gain hopefully an upgrade for trashing the mint. See, there seemed to be some dispute. Flagshipping quartermaster is meh. Wow, flagshipping quartermaster means you get 2 quartermaster plays without having to buy 2 of them or wait to play them. Also, you can just get another flagship back easy. I think I'd be pretty happy if I lined up flagship and a quartermaster. I don't think you have to like aim for that as the main thing to do here, but if it came up, I would do it. Uh, in fact, one benefit of flagship on quartermaster, it's actually better than having 2 quartermasters in play because you play the same quartermaster twice, so the cards are going to the same place. So, like, if you had 2 quartermasters in play, you could set aside 2 things and the next turn pick up 2 things. If you have one flagship quartermaster in play, you can set aside a thing, then on the second play of the quartermaster, pick up that same card because it's coming from the same quartermaster. And so, like, for whatever reason, you specifically need a silver in your hand right now. Flagship quartermaster can put the silver straight in your hand. Also worth noting that quartermaster plus villa interacts in a really nice way. If you gain a villa, the villa initially ends up on the quartermaster. Then you resolve Villa's effect, and the Villa goes straight into your hand, not onto the quartermaster. So you just get a Villa for free straight to your hand with 1 quartermaster resolution, and so you're getting Villas twice as fast as any other card. Not that I want Villas in my deck too much long term, but like if you have 7 and you need to hit 8, you can just gain a Villa straight to hand, and then you can upgrade it later. Mint looks bad. I liked eenzian's mint. I assume we mean Skumpy's mint. What was in Skumpy's deck when they got the mint? I wasn't looking. Yeah, trashing 3 coppers isn't that great. Um, I am not sure how exchange works. Why was that relevant? So the card here that says exchange that I assume they're referring to is vampire. Um, yes, you can play the vampire with Journey. So Journey only blocks you from discarding cards from play naturally at the end of your turn. So if you have a bunch of cards in play, you buy Journey, you go to clean up your cards, you don't clean up the cards, and you just take a turn with the rest of your cards. Um, Vampire, or not Vampire, rather, the Bat, leaves play before cleanup. You play the Bat, actually, no, both of them. Both of them say exchange this for the other one. So whenever you play the Vampire or whenever you play the Bat, you do the thing, you immediately exchange for the other card while you're still in your night phase. You skip your cleanup step essentially when you buy Journey. Those cards are already back into your deck. So if you buy Journey, you can play it again. Flagship Quartermaster and Journey is most important. Well, that's another good point that um, hadn't come up in the discussion of whether Quartermaster is good here. Because if you're buying Journey often, flagship, not flagship, if you're buying Journey often, Quartermaster is doing its work twice as often as normal because you resolve it on your normal turn and you resolve it again on your Journey turn. I think at some point soon I want a core tier. Like your deck's really thin. Core tier is a great way to pump it full of money really fast. You get 3 coins and a gold every time. Um, these players also don't have a quartermaster yet, though. Yeah, maybe you do quartermaster first and then core tier later. What's eenzian's bottom card? I think it's silver, if I'm not mistaken. Coven is not bad. Like if you flagship some covens, you could give out the curses pretty quickly. Uh, but like Coven costs 5, and so does Quartermaster, and so does Courtier. I have a hard time believing it's better than those. All right, let's see. Can you do anything fancy with Journey here as eenzian? You could trash the mint into a farm, trash the copper by Journey, and play the vampire. You're not accomplishing too much there. Um, I'm not seeing a better line though. I guess you could do mint into farm, just buy a flagship and trash the copper. That sounds worse. I think you really want to start getting more of these 5 cost cards into your deck, right? I think trash mint, gain farm, buy journey, trash copper with bat, then you play the vampire on your next turn and gain a quartermaster first, aiming to get a courtier soon after. We're doing silver into villa. Okay. Game. I don't know if you want a bunch of silvers. Do you want a bunch of silvers? All right, let's see. So presumably we're buying Journey here. I think I would have put the coppers in play and left the silver out of play, rather than leaving a copper in hand. Playing all of them is fine too, I guess, if you don't really want to draw the extra silver. No, we're just buying mint. A second mint? It's a lot of mints. Mint to gold would have allowed to journey the vampire. How so? The gold would be in the discard either way. You could buy journey either way. Trashing silvers, why? Yeah, so well they had to play both silvers to afford the mint. So I guess if they really wanted to trash the coppers, the silvers had to die too. Villa Quartermaster, play flagship, and you can double play it on your journey turn. What I thought eenzian was going to do is you play the flagship, you buy a villa, then you play the upgrade, and you can double play the upgrade off of the flagship. Quartermaster, okay. I hear that's a pretty good card. This deck is just like mints and coppers, right? I'm not sure I follow what the goal of this deck is. Okay, so at least we can upgrade the mints now. Hmm. So I think you trash the mints into one gold and one farm, then you pop the raise to draw the second treasure, and you buy yourself a quartermaster, and then you just leave the bat for next turn to trash the coppers. Can you gain Villa to hand with quartermaster? You can actually. Um, so quartermaster says gain a card costing up to 4, setting it aside on this. And I don't know if it's the most clear from the text, but that basically means the default gain location for whatever card you're gaining is just like directly onto the quartermaster. Um, and so Villa naturally is gained to the quartermaster. Then you resolve any win gain effects, and Villa has the when you gain this, put it into your hand effect. So Villa would never go to your discard. It would go straight to the quartermaster first, then it would move itself to your hand, and you just get the Villa into your deck for free. Um, Quartermaster is also very good at the trail for the same reason. If you quartermaster gain a trail, it goes straight into play, and you just skipped a step and got the trail straight into your deck and played it. This order makes no sense. It's probably for the bat trash, but I'd rather not trash and mint another gold. Let me go back and look. So they did upgrade trash, mint into farm. Wait, what? Yeah. Oh, I see. They upgrade trash, raise into silver, then mint into farm. Then the bat trash the silver. Yeah, I don't like that at all. I think they're a little bit tunnel vision on making sure the bat gets played. Okay, so eenzian's going for Coven. We've been over this. I think Coven looks okay. I think it looks a little suboptimal, but this deck still looks very far ahead. Oh, we also got to do the double quartermaster thing. I just now noticed on their non-journey turn they double played the quartermaster, the flagship. Now they're getting to do the thing twice. And here we see they gained a villa and a flagship with their two gains, and the villa got to go straight to hand. 7 is nothing special. I think you buy a raise because it's slightly better than nothing, and then you either buy a courtier or a second quartermaster. They go for another upgrade. I suppose that's okay. Wouldn't mind trashing the silvers or villas that you gain straight to your hand. You can gain a villa with your quartermaster, upgrade it into a 5 cost card. The thing with Coven is if you just have the one Coven, you're probably not giving out those curses before the game ends. So you really have to commit to the bit and take multiple Covens. But then if you're taking multiple Covens, it's really eating into your deck because you're passing up on multiple better 5s. Skumpy's also going for Coven. Maybe the curses are going to drop before the game ends then. Alright, so we're voluntarily choosing to keep the mint instead of trash it, which makes me think they really want to mint these farms. Is that important? I don't know. I think I'd rather have the mint out of my deck immediately and just one farm directly into the deck, especially when it's coming at the cost of buying a 5 there. Alright, flagship to hand. So you could play flagship and farm, buy a villa, and then play the upgrade. And then you get to double play the upgrade. You could just play upgrade once and see what you draw. Probably buy villa and then flagship, play the coven multiple times. Oh, they had a second quartermaster to resolve. The extra villa maybe changes things. I think my natural inclination would be to play one villa, then one flagship, then an upgrade. Not sure if that's the best order. Alternatively, you could play the upgrade, trash villa once, play villa, play 2 flagships and a coven. You would have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 15 money. That'd be more than enough to buy whatever you wanted. Hmm. What's the match score? I forgot. It's 2-1 in Scumpy's favor. Looking about to be 2-2. Yeah, the quartermasters are turning out to be very, or I think the quartermasters, the one quartermaster that has been gained this entire game has turned out to be quite good. Surely you click Journey here. That looks non-negotiable. Could be province already. There's not a huge amount of further building to do when you're capped at 10 cards per turn. Alternatively, you could like just buy yourself a free villa and buy another 5. Also looks okay. I think villa is better than nothing, given that you can upgrade it for free. They just buy a quartermaster and don't take the free villa. I mean, villa is often a bad card in the deck, but with upgrades around, I think I would take the free villa. That's not entirely obvious. Well, it gets trashed into what? You're going to watch out for a pilot really soon. Curses are going to run out with all these covens, and then the quartermaster is gaining all of the flagships and estates, or villas and estates, or villas and flagships, all of which are a threat. This game actually seems quite likely to end on 3 piles. eenzian has all of everything, except mints. Skumpy was winning the mint split. Alright, 2-2, going into game 5. Okay. So the only village here, aside from some lucky loopholes, is sacrifice. Although you could gain actions off of, oh no, I was gonna say you gain actions off of groom and then sacrifice them for villages, but that's quite the invest. Like you play one groom to gain a groom and a horse or something. Well, that was a terminal action card you just played. So if you wanted to play multiple actions, you have to have 2 sacrifices. One sacrifice trashes the horse, then you play a groom, you gain 2 things. I think the answer is probably you just play with one terminal action card here, unless you get lucky and pull a staff, and then you can add a second action card. What would I like that terminal action card to be? Either Groom or Mine. I want the answer to be Mine, because Mine's the fun card. Groom might just be the better card. Probably is the better card. Or maybe it's just Sacrifice even to get some trashing in. I mean, you pick one of these, you stick with it. Yeah, Sacrifice the Estates, it's probably right. It's just the least fun. Um, and then you'll be able to draw here just fine. You need to find a storyteller to kick off your turn, and then you can draw a bunch of cards. Grotto will give you a 9-card hand to find the storyteller. Um, I'm actually not as sure that I'm considering you could skip sacrifice, right, and just set aside your junk with Grotto, and then storyteller can deal with the coppers. Well, yeah, the problem with mine, I guess, is that it costs 5, so it's competing with storyteller. Um, whereas sacrifice or groom you can open with. If I had the 5-2, I think I would click mine. There's storyteller, cauldron, groom synergy. So if you played a storyteller, you could play cauldron in the action phase and then play groom and trigger the cauldron. Whereas if you like played multiple grooms and gained 4 action cards and then played your cauldrons, that you already gained more than 3 actions in the turn before you played cauldron, so it just can't trigger that turn. Don't like the groom at all. I don't know. Groom's a good card. I wouldn't underestimate it. Oh, we use the groom to gain the sacrifice. We can't make up our mind. Yeah, I don't think I like having multiple terminal action cards in this deck. I think with Grottos, you're going to reliably find whichever one action card you have every single turn. And one of these cards is just going to be a dead card in your deck. That Jeweled Egg seems rather premature. I think Jeweled Egg looks like a decent card here at some point, but like step one of this kingdom is not get the loots immediately, that's for sure. I want to have two Grottos in my deck, and I want to have them set up so that I'm setting aside 4 cards every turn, and then I'll think about adding more payload. Did they have the 4-3 split or the 3-4? Okay, so Skumpy had the 4-3. You could consider like Sacrifice or Groom plus Foresight maybe on the 4-3. On the 3-4, I think I would buy Grotto over Border Guard. Border Guard's a nice card to have, but it looks more optional. Grotto is for sure a card I want to have 2 copies of. I said Grotto is a card I for sure want to have 2 copies of. Hint, hint. Border Guard is at 6. Grotto's still at 9. All right, here we go. We're going to set aside 3 cards on our Grotto. We're going to buy a second Grotto. Just kidding. We're going to only have the one Grotto. You didn't need those 2 victory points right now. Those estates weren't going anywhere. You could sacrifice those at any point in time. You could have trashed the copper, gotten 2 money, got yourself a second Grotto. The problem with just the one is you're going to have this huge hand, and you're going to put all your cards in your hand, and then you're not going to have a Grotto to set aside those cards for the next turn. They played the first, and then they didn't get the second one. And once again, why'd you put them both in hand? Why do you have? So John asks, what if we do Groom, gain Fack, and then sack the horses for a village effect? So I think, technically speaking, you can get a village out of all of that. If you have 2 sacrifices and 1 Groom, you have to have the 2 sacrifices because one of the sacrifices has to go towards supporting the Groom that you're playing every turn to get action cards. So like you play 1 sacrifice, you sacrifice 1 horse, then you play the Groom, you gain a Groom and a horse, then you sacrifice the Groom, and then all of that combined got you 1 village effect. And how much draw do you get out of that? So you have to have the Groom, the sacrifice, and 2 action cards. You get 4 cards back. I think sacrifice, sacrifice, Groom adds up to an Acropolis. Oh my god. I hate so much that that early jeweled egg has turned into a staff. You didn't deserve that staff. Certainly not for the greedy early egg buy. Staff has got to be the best loot in this kingdom by a mile. Um, Staff is going away the best loot. Far and away? The only things I can think that sentence might have been intended to say are like very far away from what it turned out to be, more so than a typo could explain. Is this a phrase that I've never heard of? Staff is going away the best loot? I've never heard that in my life. I think you're yanking my chain. I don't think that's a saying. Now I'm distracted. What's happened? With staff and strong are pronounced Tsue in Japanese. That's funny. Yeah, I think staff is probably the strongest loot in general. Definitely the strongest loot here. Great John says a link to the Cambridge Dictionary. I just drag and drop it. In sports, if a team or person wins the competition going away, they win it by a lot. They seemed to score at will in the final period, and the Knicks won going away. I've never heard this in my life. Are there any examples of this being used? Yes, it sounds equivalent to what I would say is far and away. I've never heard that. It says it's a U.S. thing. Fascinating. You literally just read an. I mean, like an example of it being used in print or something. Some dictionaries, like I think Merriam-Webster does a good job of like, here's some examples of where it appeared in the New York Times or something. That was their own hypothetical example. No, but like by a real person. Because there's a game going on. What's happened? Skumpy pulled an amphora. Definitely not nearly as good as staff. Um, eenzian, because of the staff, has added a second sacrifice. Ah, I guess that's okay. I was gonna say you don't need to get super thin because you can always have at least four junk set aside on the grotto. So one sacrifice is enough to clear up as much junk as you really need to trash. I'm assuming the goal of the second sacrifice is probably going to be to add some jeweled eggs, but you could have added a mine, and then mine could have trashed your jeweled eggs. I think doubloons is probably the worst loot on average. It's either that one or insignia. Yeah, half the reason doubloons and insignia are so bad is just because they don't say plus buy. I think doubloons with plus buy would probably still be well better than amphora or something. Um, Same for insignia. Insignia is probably the one that most deserves plus buy. Wait a second. Eenzian doesn't have grottos. I hope you dud every turn. That is unacceptable. Yeah, Chalice is not the worst. There are contexts where Chalice can be the worst loot to pull. Eenzian's another terminal is Legion, Mine, Groom. Uh, well, so they took two sacrifices, which I don't think is the correct answer, but it's what they did. Um, what would I add as a second terminal? I don't think Legionary hurts enough. Like you discard down to two cards, but you still I think if you find a storyteller you kick off your turn. And Legionary actually increases your chance of finding the storyteller rather than decreasing it. And as long as you find a storyteller in your hand, I think you're going to draw your whole deck. So I don't think I would take Legionary. Um, I like mine. I would strongly consider mine. I'm not sure if mine is correct, but I want mine. I think if not mine, the other choice would probably be Groom. It's like Groom gaining a bunch of silvers would be a decent substitute for mine trashing jeweled eggs. Um, yeah, if Grotto weren't here, I could see Legionary being really painful. Uh, um, you're asking a good question that I don't have an answer to. Why didn't we play the Grotto? I'm so confused. Why, why didn't you play the Grotto? Set aside the cards. All right, Wandering Winder has a reason. Um, it it's an easy card to miss. Maybe they were thinking about it like Monastery or something. They're like, I'm gonna buy my cards first, and then I'll play my Grotto in the night phase. Not playing horse first. Also a good question. Wouldn't you want to find more treasures for your storyteller to play? How many storytellers do they have? Just two of them, right? Like you're not really guaranteed to find the storyteller here. You're saying Sextant never mind. I'm gonna say still yes, play the horse first, right? Like the Sextant shows you the top cards of your deck before the storyteller draws. So it's not like you need to keep a horse in hand so that like your Sextant can reveal good cards and your horse can draw it. You play the storyteller, you play the Sextant, and then the storyteller draws whatever you top decked. I don't think there's any reason to hold on to this horse. Skumpy has taken the phrase "hold your horses" a little bit too literally. Also, can I note that we just discarded the storyteller? They played a border guard and discarded the storyteller to put the sacrifice in hand. If you just take the storyteller, you can draw back around and find the sacrifice, right? Why aren't we playing the horse? Are we saving the horse for a special occasion? We did play the grotto. Didn't set aside the cards I would have expected. Oh, they're trying. I see. They're keeping the horses around to sacrifice for villages. They're getting fancy with it. Okay, so eenzian now has a legionary also. We only have the one staff, so I guess they must plan on also sacrificing something. We killing the border guard, I assume. Undoing. Play a storyteller first. What? How do I go back on Steply? I don't know what that means. How do I go back one step? Maybe? I don't know what they're asking. It we'll need Johns to translate. Johns knows all the phrases. Okay. 13 money. Seems like you need more plus buy here. Maybe a second storyteller and a cauldron or a gold mine. A groom. We needed a groom to feed the sacrifices. Look, you had a staff. I can understand Skumpy really wanting to play two terminals and jumping through a million hoops to do it, but you have a staff. I think you can live with two terminals each turn. I think if I were going to add another action card, I would seriously think about mine. You mine a copper into a jeweled egg, and that's how you get your extra plus buy, maybe? I don't know. No, they had a gold mine. They just didn't find it, I guess. All right, we have sacrificed a horse. I'm going to guess, is the groom going to gain a jeweled egg, maybe? And then we sacrifice that? Okay, so how many more action cards are down there in the bottom four? There might be a horse down there. I think there could be one more horse. Uh, I'm thinking the groom gains a jeweled egg, then you draw the rest of it with the storyteller, and then you set aside the grotto and sacrifice the jeweled egg. Yeah, looks like they got the same idea. I'm guessing they set aside the horse. And looks like they miscounted by one. I'm gonna guess maybe they forgot to count the silver that the groom gained, and that's why they undercounted here. Not that it's a big deal. After setting aside everything, I think you end up with 6 money. Be wrong about that. Looks like 6. Unless we undo for some reason. Even if you want to sack the horse and not play it, you still shouldn't grotto it. You need it in your draw pile. Maybe? I'm I'm unsure. Yeah, if you're just If you're just going to buy a 5 cost anyway, I think it probably makes sense to just leave the horse on the deck. Um, Storyteller draws before debt is paid. Oh, debt. Um, yeah, you get to choose. I think the game naturally suggests that you pay off debt, and you have to decline if you don't want to pay off debt first. Spell Scroll is pretty bad. Hmm, maybe? Spell Scroll is like a one-shot village effect. Even if you want like a storyteller, you could play your storyteller, play the Spell Scroll as another storyteller, and then you get to play that storyteller for free, and you get a village out of it that way. Yeah, so the rule for debt used to be before the Rising Sun expansion that you could only pay off the debt in your buy phase, and specifically, I think before, yeah, or just in your buy phase, I think was the rule. And that was a big problem for black market because if you had even one debt and you played black market, and if you had like a million money in one debt and you saw a card you wanted in the black market, you couldn't buy it because you can't buy things when you're in debt, but you can't pay off debt in the action phase. Um, then the Rising Sun expansion came out, and that I think also would have been a big problem for Change. I think was the main card where the old debt rules would have really thrown things for a loop. And so the rule is now you can just pay off your debt whenever. If you have the extra money, you can pay it off. Which is great for black market and for Change, but it has a number of other little minor effects as well. One of which is like Storyteller, for example. Um, if you wanted to put some of that money towards paying off debt, you pay off the debt after playing the storyteller, like after you put the treasures into play, but then before you took the +1 card. You like play a bunch of treasures, pay off some debt, and then only draw a smaller number of cards. Um, there's other nifty interactions too, like Poorhouse, for example. It says like +4 coins and then -1 coin for each treasure in your hand. If you had a Poorhouse but like 5 coppers in hand, but you also had debt, you could play the Poorhouse, get 4 money, immediately put that money towards paying off debt. Then you try to subtract 5 coins, and then you go, oops, I don't have any money anymore. I already used it to pay off my debt. And then avoid Poorhouse's negative effect. Iris says, my favorite interaction is with Wine Merchant repaying debt, I mean. Yeah, so with Wine Merchant, you have to have 2 money left over after buying things to get the Wine Merchants back off the tavern mat. What you could do is leave yourself with 2 money left over and also 2 debt left over. Discard the Wine Merchants and then say, "Psych, I'm actually putting the 2 money towards paying off the debt after you got your wine merchants back," and you still got to use all your money. So I'm thinking eenzian might not get a grotto this game. I still like mine. I'd be happy to have a mine. You could turn the jeweled egg into a cauldron, or into another jeweled egg, even maybe. Hmm. That province feels premature. These piles are not low, and you're only hitting 9. Probably not time to add a province yet. Yeah, Souk has the same thing as Poorhouse, where it gives you some money, and then it subtracts the money again. And if you have debt, you could just put all your money towards paying off debt and then avoid the negative money. So here we go. We get to get a free village effect out of the spell scroll if you want to play an extra action card here. You could turn it into a legionary, you could turn it into a mine, turn it into another groom. So many options. You could sacrifice a spell scroll. You get 2 money and 2 cards and 2 actions because it's a treasure and a action card. Uh, what are we doing with it? Intriguing. I'm guessing. Actually, I don't know what I'm guessing. Why are we gonna do in the groom? Are we gonna gain some more treasures maybe instead, and then turn the spell scroll into a sacrifice or a mine or something and trash whatever we gained? I don't know what the goal is here. Well, how unimaginative. A cauldron? I guess their goal is gonna be. Wait a second. Did the order even matter here? So it seems clear they undid the groom play so they could play the cauldron before the groom. But the groom was only going to gain you 2 actions anyway, so it wouldn't have changed anything. Yeah, so they'll give out a curse with the cauldron, but I'm pretty sure they would have given out the curse just fine either way, right? They've only gained 2 actions before the buy phase. Maybe the cauldron's going to be a mistake because the curses could be the thing that finally provokes eenzian into getting grottos. What else are we buying with 7 money? Yeah, 3 storytellers, which feels like a reasonable number of those. I'm not sure what I would buy here. Cauldron Border Guard seems fine. Another jeweled egg, I guess that's fine too. Nothing was really jumping out to me. eenzian only has 2 storytellers in this entire deck, and they don't have a grotto set up. Gotta take the Border Guard. Yeah. Obviously, you want to play the staff, but it's more imperative that you make sure you find a storyteller and draw back around to the staff. Likewise, obviously, you take the gold mine. Drawing cards is good. Or maybe they're considering taking the Legionary and sacrificing the Legionary. That could be a reason to take the Legionary. Now you gotta count how many cards are down in your discard pile. Let's see. So they had a clean shuffle. They gained 2 curses. They've discarded 1 card. Oh, they're just guesstimating. Look at all these cards you didn't draw. I would have counted that first. So they discarded a staff and a gold mine and a silver and a province. So there are 4 cards down there from the border guards, plus 2 curses. 6 cards down there, but one of them is a gold mine, which is a cantrip. So you needed to draw 5 cards from your discard pile, which involved playing a lot more than 2 coppers. Yep. So they've, I think the bottom 3 cards are all junk, right? That's very generous, but that's definitely just a mistake on their part, miscounting their cards. Let's see, they have a silver, right? Yeah, it's the silver that was discarded by the border guard. It's Curse Province Silver on the bottom 3. So I think you fix this situation by buying Foresight. You buy a Storyteller, and then you buy Foresight. Not only will it put a Storyteller in your hand for next turn, but it's gonna skip through all 3 of those cards while doing so and give you a clean shuffle. Probably play the Sacrifice here and the Legionary. I could see playing Groom over Legionary, perhaps, to gain another Jewel Dragon Silver. Not clear. Legionary's attack is more of a -2 coins attack here than a -2 cards attack. Your opponent should be able to draw either way, but with Storyteller around, having to draw 2 extra cards is basically like 2 fewer coins. They sacrificed the Groom. That doesn't seem like the right choice to me. 12 money. Time to buy, for sure, a Grotto. You definitely need a Grotto. You have a bunch of junk and you know more curses are coming in. Wouldn't you like somewhere to put it? Yeah. Foresight Storyteller is fine, although if you're going to do that, I'm not sure why you sacrifice the Groom just to draw the junk into your hand. And they do buy a Grotto. Aha, yeah, so the Cauldron was a mistake. Not because the curses are bad, but because they convinced your opponent to undo an error they had made of skipping Grotto. I think I prefer Skumpy's position. I think if you give it a turn or two, these Cauldrons might be threatening a pile out. If they give up 3 curses here, 3 curses next turn, curses are at 2, they can buy up the last 2 curses and pile something. I think is a realistic threat. Don't you need to sacrifice that border guard? Was what this deck was supposed to do. Is there a horse in there somewhere they're trying to find? Is it like the bottom card of their deck is the horse? Okay, yeah, so the horse is the very bottom part of their deck. I think that they were just like really focused on I gotta sacrifice the horse. You could have just trashed a border guard and it would have been totally fine. You got like 6 of them. Taking an extra grotto. It's a weird choice. What? Oh, we're gonna sacrifice this grotto and then draw into the grotto, and that's why we're doing it in that order? I think you just play the grotto, set aside for it. Yeah. Orb is a village. A little bit late for that, though. Okay, so I think you do want to buy one province here. I think you just want to stay up 1 points until you can pile curses and jeweled eggs, probably. Maybe province, jeweled egg, and a storyteller. Got to be one more action card to give out the three curses. Undoing the choice of discard for the sextant? Maybe they want to leave the grotto on top so they can sacrifice it? I don't think I like that. I think you just want to maximize your chance of finding a storyteller. Not a big deal. But yeah, I think Skumpy ought to win next turn on a pile out. I think is the most likely outcome here. I think Storyteller and a Jeweled Egg was one possible buy. Alternatively, I don't know, like Cauldron and a Grotto. Wait, what? Oh, they bought Foresight, set aside a Grotto. Yeah, that's fine. In my head, I was thinking that was going to play the Grotto, like Ghost or something. It just puts it in your hand. Obviously, you wouldn't want to play the Grotto at the start of your turn. So, how many points does eenzian need here to be safe? Probably at least a double province, right? The big threat is Scumpy gives out three more curses and buys two curses and gains a jeweled egg off of Groom, buys up the jeweled eggs. Maybe you can buy a province alongside of all that. Wouldn't be surprised if you could. In which case they're scoring like 7 additional points. I think the biggest problem the curses are creating is the pile pressure, which is your opponent has a much easier time piling up curses than you do in any of the game. Hmm. So if you put the jeweled egg in hand and then you play, oh, here's a case where the debt could come up. So I think what you want to do here is play storyteller, play staff with the storyteller, and then sacrifice the jeweled egg to get the loot. And the reason you want to do it in that order is if you sacrifice the loot, sacrifice the jeweled egg in the action phase, you can draw the loot. Whereas if it's in buy phase, it's too late. The downside of that is you don't have too many cards left to draw. So if you do storyteller, staff, sacrifice, jeweled egg, you're going to draw like 6 cards and waste money drawing. But what they could do instead is you play storyteller, staff, sacrifice, jeweled egg, and you put some of that money towards paying off your debt. So you only draw exactly as many cards as you need, and then you get to have the loot early, and you didn't waste money doing it. It does not look like we're going to pursue that line, though. So surely you set aside 4 cards. I guess they're contemplating whether to set aside the jeweled egg, province, and 2 curses and trash a curse, or set aside all the junk and sacrifice a jeweled egg. I would think sacrificing the jeweled egg sounds better to me. Anything looks to be in a pretty bad spot. This is not enough money. Is this even enough to afford a province? You set aside 4, you're getting 6, 8, 9, 12 money. Okay, they just barely afford a province here, I think. And I think that's still going to lose to the first pile out. Uh, Discarding the gold seems wrong, right? I mean, gold is basically +2 cards when you've got a storyteller in your hand. Maybe that's okay. If you're gonna play these first and draw back around to the gold, you'll probably find enough treasure. Puzzle box. Puzzle box not a bad loot to get. You gotta set aside an extra storyteller to make sure you always find it on top. It is hurt by legionary. Okay, buy a grotto. No province. Uh, I think that's actually a reasonable buy. Um, I think one province isn't enough to get you out of losing the game range. Like if your opponent draws their deck, they're gonna win the game. Even if you bought a province, like 13 points is not gonna be enough to save you. Uh, so I think you gotta hope they kind of dud and play for a win in a few turns, which probably means adding a grotto so that your deck's at least functional. Um, I don't know about buying gold though. But yeah, it was pretty unlikely Skumpy was gonna dud. They have a sinister plot plus a grotto plus a bunch of border guards. The odds they didn't kick off this turn are very low. Hmm. Oh yeah, this is gonna win easily, I think. Um, Probably curses and jeweled eggs is the easiest pile. Play groom, gain a groom just to up the number of action cards you've gained. Then you sacrifice something. Second groom gains a jeweled egg. You draw the egg and the silver, and then you buy out like uh grotto 3 eggs, 2 curses. Just one example. I imagine you can also pile grottos and curses would work fine. I've beaten him to the punch. Gaining a gold with gold mine doesn't feel like they're going for the win. That's a good point. Um, so gaining gold with gold mine, if you plan to redraw the gold, is effectively like paying 1 debt to get a gold. Um, because the gold is paying off 3 of its own debt. But like, why are you taking net -1 money if you're planning to win this turn? With Storyteller on, it's kind of like -2 because not only did you have to play the gold, you had to draw the gold, which cost you 1 money. Um, I assume the win is still here, and despite the minor indiscretion of gaining an unnecessary gold. Yeah. So 8. Oh, Storytellers works too. Yeah, they could have done like curses and grottos, curses and jeweled egg, curses and storyteller. I think they could have done storyteller and jeweled egg as well. A lot of combinations. I think it was the opening. I don't think the groom did all that much work there. Yeah, I think skipping grotto was a bigger deal. Okay, Final Kingdom. Looks okay-ish. You got an expensive village in the form of Border Village. Your draw card is Catacombs. You could also draw with Distant Shore from the Odyssey pile or Imp from the Devil's Workshop. Mm, Crashing is Catapult. Plus buy. Is it just the loots? Might just be the loots. You can gain things off of War Chest or Sunken Treasure until a pile runs out. Friendly Cargo Ship is, I think, a pretty bad target for friendly. You don't want a bunch of cargo ships, and if you do want cargo ship, it's because you want to buy it early and play it immediately, not discard it for another one in the future. So it seems like you really want to hit six here at some point. I don't think Artisan looks that great. I mean, there's some decent stuff for Artisan to gain, but like the best five is the Catacombs, which you want to be gaining alongside of a Border Village each time. I'm gonna say probably no to the Artisan. I can imagine playing with Artisan, but it seems a little suboptimal to me, I think. Uh, so the first opening I'm thinking about is Catapult plus Devil's Workshop. Just has zero chance of hitting six immediately, but you get thin, you add something to your deck, and then you're probably hitting six soon-ish. Maybe the Catapult denies your opponent from getting to six. If you're gunning for an immediate six cost buy, something like Cargo Ship plus Gondola is pretty likely to hit six. Maybe even set aside something nice. Um, could be Catapult plus Old Map. Just makes you really likely to play the Catapult a few times early. I'm not sure. Maybe Catapult plus Gondola? Is that likely to get to six? Like if you find Gondola turn three and delay it, you just have to find four money in the next turn. I could see Catapult Gondola being opening. I think that's my new favorite opening. Gives you a decent chance of hitting six, and it puts the Trasher in your deck immediately. I vote Catapult plus Gondola. Final answer. See what they go with. All right, Catapult. But they bought it on four, so they don't intend to buy Gondola in turn two. Will Skumpy follow suit? I think I'm not feeling the Devil's Workshop opening so much. I think it's a card that'll be good once you're gaining imps off of it, but that's not going to be happening the first time you play it. You'll probably be gaining like an old map or something, which is okay. As I say that, then buy Devil's Workshop. Catapult Cargo Ship. Interesting. It's going to be sad if they collide, which they look likely to. Yep. I think you play the Catapult here and just set aside, or buy an old map rather. Set aside nothing. I'm not sure if you take a free cargo ship. Probably you do. If they don't play the cargo ship, they could discard it for a second cargo ship. Um, but it's not clear that having two cargo ships and a catapult on a deck with no villages is better than not having two extra catapult or two cargo ships. Okay, this is interesting. So they went for Play the cargo ship, buy a gondola, play the catapult that way. That makes sense to me. And it's going to hit 6. Unless their opponent has something to say about it. It was going to hit 6, and now they have to discard. Sad times. Not. I think you discard the coppers first and trash the estate. There's no other estate trashers, and I'd rather get them out of the way sooner rather than later. I think is more important to me than getting the attack in early. I could imagine keeping the copper and making sure you attack your opponent early as well. This is a dilemma that often comes up in catapult games. They're going for the trash. And a search. Yeah, you probably want to get at least one search down at some point because if the pile empties, getting some plus buy could be significant. It looks like the choice to keep the copper in hand is going to pay off because Skumpy would have hit 6 here, and the discard attack has denied them that. Old map buy makes sense to me. Hmm. All right, first thing, I think just Border Village Catacombs. Yeah. Artisan and War Chest are both helping you gain 5s, but you want to be gaining 5s at the same pace as the 6s because Border Village will let you play the Catacombs. And so I think you just shoot straight for that rather than taking the detour. That is an interesting choice, and I don't think a good one. So they had the cargo ship and the catapult in hand. They played the cargo ship to set aside a cargo ship. But they could have played the catapult and trashed a card, and if they wanted an extra cargo ship, they could have gained it for free off of the friendly effect. You wouldn't have gotten to set it aside, um, but you would have trashed a card from your deck. I think you just play the search. Get that search out of your deck. If you're suffering from terminal space issues, play the terminal that's going to remove itself. Skumpy has hit 5, not quite the number you're looking for here. Not sure what to buy. Catacombs doesn't look great until you got a border village to go with it. Gonna take a voyage, which makes sense. And another search, a gondola, a second voyage. Voyage does not stack. Originally, when Allies first came out, Voyage did not have the not a turn in a row constraints. If you could get 4 voyages and play them, you could take 4 voyage turns. Uh, in fact, I remember playing a game with King's Court and Voyage where you King's Court a bunch of voyages and you take like 11 turns in a row. And you're not accomplishing much on each of those turns because you're playing like 3 cards at a time, which I think was the original reason why it wasn't restricted. Was oh, it's 11 turns, but it's 3 cards per turn. It's not like a full turn you're sitting through. But then I think eventually Don Alexa played enough Voyage games where you're sitting through your opponent taking 5 turns at once to say that's not fun gameplay. And then Voyage got the constraint. In fact, that happened at the same. So Voyage went from not capped to capped, where you can only do 1 voyage turn. But the wording for a lot of the extra turn cards changed so that they block each other. Like you can't take a mission turn and an outpost turn, or an outpost turn and a voyage turn because it just counts the total number of turns you've taken. Oh, possession also got limited at the same time. Possession used to be stackable, and then possession got the you can only do one of these things per turn constraint. If you're gonna take a gondola, you should have trashed copper. I'm not sure exactly what point we were looking at there. I'll take your word for it. I guess this turn they could have gotten an attack. Yeah, if they left a copper in hand, they could have trashed a copper. Poor Skumpy hits 5 again. Uh, Again, I think the key number here is 6. If you want a bunch of border villages in your deck, and the amount of the other cards you want kind of hinges on the amount of border villages you got in your deck. I've hit 6, or so it looks. This is the voyage turn, so you can't actually play all those treasures because you're capped at playing 3 treasures this turn. So they're just going to take a free gold off the Devil's Workshop. Like many catapult games, this one's going to be very slow to get going. Both have an okay-ish trasher that's doing about as much to slow down your opponent as it is to help you. And then accomplishing anything here requires hitting high numbers, which is not easy when being attacked consistently by catapult. Okay, so eenzian also only has 5 money here, maximum. I think you just trash the copper and delay the gondola till next turn, hoping to spike 6 at a later date. 5 isn't helping you. Alright, they trash the gondola instead, giving out a curse. That's okay as well. I think I'd rather take the 2 coins from gondola next turn, give myself a greater chance of hitting 6. The curse is not easy to get rid of, so there is a case to be made for that. What are you buying? They don't have a Devil's Workshop yet. I'm not sure if they have a Voyage. So they don't have a Voyage either. I could see picking up either of those. Trash and a gold to give out a curse. Uh, yeah, that's probably correct. If you were playing the gold, you're only hitting 3 anyway. Nothing super special for 3. Attacking them denies them from hitting 6, gives them a curse which hurts. I think maximize the number of golds in your deck is not in goal here. And we hit Border Village. On a Voyage turn, no less. The Sunken Treasure could potentially gain Border Villages, but it requires you to have not played any. If Sunken Treasure were revealed and you had 5 and didn't have Border Villages in your deck yet, I could easily see buying one. Once you've got some, it starts to look worse. Um, Best case scenario, I think, is you play your Voyage and you find the Sunken Treasure on your Voyage turn, where you're most likely not playing Border Villages anyway, and then it can gain you Border Village. This looks like it's probably going to hit 6. Just need to find one more treasure. Yep, just barely got there. Um, So eenzian could play Voyage, play Cargo Ship, Border Village, Sunken Treasure, set aside the Sunken Treasure, and then use the Sunken Treasure to gain another Border Village. That looks good to me. Alternatively, you could just play the Search and get it out of your deck. And I think if you know for sure that that Sunken Treasure is getting you an immediate Border Village next turn, I think you go for it. Um, and then later on, it can probably gain you a distant shore or two. And then if it runs out of good targets, you can always catapult it to give out a curse. Not sure if there's any value in playing this old map either way. I guess you got to figure out, are those three good cards or three bad cards down there? If they're bad cards, you probably want to play the old map and cycle through your deck. If they're cards you really leave on top, then you just play Catapult and Sunken Treasure and call it a day. Catapult, Copper, Sunken Treasure could let you buy a search. I'm not sure if you want an extra search in your deck if you haven't even played your first one yet. For Catacombs, makes sense. Alternative line to consider could have been gaining a. Never mind. I was going to say gaining a gondola and set aside the old map, but that's mixing up Gondola's effect with farmhands. Yeah, Catacombs definitely the right game then. Only hitting 4 here, and alas, not a great target for the Sunken Treasure. I think you do want to play it and gain something, just so that your Devil's Workshop gains an imp. I think for Skumpy, I would consider gaining a search. Your one search is already in play. Border Village is going to empty soon-ish. It's got to be some. Oh no, you can't gain a search because your search is in play, and that's blocking the Sunken Treasure from getting an additional search. I guess you could buy a search maybe. You go for Artisan. You buy a Gondola. Looks like 6, but this is a Voyage turn. So probably I would trash a Copper and buy nothing. Could trash a Gold. Or maybe trash a Copper and buy a Search. I think is better than nothing. That's not entirely clear. There's buy nothing, fair enough. Catacombs, quite the fortunate card to draw off the top there. Mhm. I think you take that. Sunken Treasure's not doing a whole lot for you right now, but playing Catapult seems important. The upside of pitching it would be searching a little bit deeper in your deck to find the Voyage for sure. Cost of not playing the Catapult. I think Catapult's probably more important, but that's not entirely clear. I would think about catapulting the second cargo ship to give out a curse. Now they go for the attack. Or they go for the other attack. They go for the discard attack instead of the cursing attack. Alright, this second treasure presumably is gaining a distant shore. Uh, with once distant shores get gained, you gotta start looking at the state pile, which will run out. Border Village is definitely gonna run out. Uh, States run. I'm not seeing an immediate third pile though. After Border Village is in a states, maybe curses. Uh, if you took a second catapult and started cursing aggressively, maybe you could engineer some sort of Border Village estate curse pile out in a few turns. Not sure if that's something worth pursuing. Okay, not much of a turn for Skumpy here. You do get a Border Village and a Voyager's turn at least. Hmm. Yeah, I think would you rather play Search Catapult or Catapult Devil's Workshop? I think I'd rather play the Search than the Catapult. Yeah, that Search into play before Border Village is empty, which is going to happen any second now. Probably more important than getting a gold off of the Devil's Workshop. Do you buy anything here? Search you buy now probably doesn't activate in time. You could contemplate buying a silver, more so as a catapult target than anything. Silver both costs 3 and as a treasure, so you catapult silver, you get a double attack in. I think you could buy a silver on the grounds of catapulting it, but I think passing is also reasonable. You have plenty of other things you're happy to catapult. Hmm. So this second treasure is going to have darn near no targets. Catapulting it might still be premature because you could draw it on your voyage turn and then it would still have a lot of value. All right, so yeah, you trash a copper, you play a cargo ship, you're hitting 6 off of just the coppers, you can delay the gondola, buy a border village into something, and then is there anything of value that this sunken treasure is gaining you? It can gain you an artisan, but I'm not even sure you want a free artisan. We're limited on terminal space. I'm pretty ambivalent on even playing the sunken treasure here. Artisan's not terrible. For example, if you're suffering for terminals, you could always gain a gondola to hand and then that'll let you play an extra action card, which makes the artisan effectively non-terminal, but at the cost of it's just like a silver gainer at that point, which isn't anything special. Catacombs maybe could run out. That's getting pretty low. Have to watch out for the catacombs pile. Mhm. Okay, here we go. This should activate the searches. Let's see what we get. A sextant and a figurehead and a doubloons. Yeah, Scubby definitely came out on top there. Sextant says plus buy, and the sifting might matter in a kingdom where you don't have full deck control. And figurehead doesn't say plus buy, but is a draw card, which you definitely need here. The balloons is just shoving your deck full of golds, which is okay, but not the main thing I think you're looking for there. It's funny that the log tells you search will stop functioning after this turn. This is a warning that was added after that new rules change, where I think from February onward, the rules for duration cards are now if the duration card somehow leaves play early, its effect is negated on future turns. Of course, the reason the search is leaving play is because it's trashing itself and gaining the loot, and there's nothing it had to do on future turns anyway. So it's a bit of a pointless warning in this context of search, but it's there for other duration cards where if it somehow gets trashed from play, and you're expecting it to do things, the new rulings that it can't. So search could say every time to add some confusion. Let me read search again. Every time a supply pile empties, trash this and gain a loot. I think, when I think about that, I think that might technically work differently than the current search. Um, because whenever duration leaves play, it negates any effects it has on future turns. But yeah, like Maharat is saying, I think if you popped the search one turn and emptied a second pile the same turn, your wording would actually mean it could trigger twice in the same turn, and then it just wouldn't do anything if another pile emptied on a future turn. I think. So as an example of something similar, um, it would be trashed after the first empty. Yes. So the ruling is not that duration cards immediately stop doing anything the moment they leave play. It's that any effects they set up for future turns are negated and don't take effect. So a good example of this is like, let's say you, what's a good way to get a lighthouse out of play? You throne room a lighthouse. You play it once normally, and then you play it a second time as Way of the Horse, causing it to leave play. That lighthouse is not going to protect you from attacks on future turns, but its effect is still active for the rest of the turn. So if you play Throne Room, Lighthouse, Way of the Horse, and then in your buy phase, your opponent plays some black cats in response to your province buy, you're still going to be protected from those black cats on that current turn. The lighthouse is still active for the rest of the turn, but then because it's out of play, there's nothing tracking it for future turns, and it won't protect you on your opponent's turn from attacks. Yeah, I think we're at the provincing stage. We got all the border villages already get. There's low value in adding additional terminal actions or anything, so you can't build much bigger. I think I like the second catapult. Whoever took that. There's just so many things in this kingdom I'd be happy to catapult. Happy to trash coppers to get in an attack. Happy to trash uh, gondolas and devil's workshops and stuff to get them out of the deck and give out curses. I like how this errata is added to avoid confusion. Yeah, I I find the old rules easier to understand, but I think the main goal of the change, predominantly for people who are playing with cards in person, where the game, it's not like the site is tracking everything for you to stop you from making mistakes. And so the rule that says the card's got to be in play for it to do its thing makes it easier to not accidentally forget to resolve something in a future turn because you forgot that, like, on the previous turn you recessioned a wharf or something. Um, and so I think the thing it's solving is not that the rules themselves are easier to understand, it's that the game is easier to follow because the cards in play more directly correspond to what's actually going to happen. Although ironically, a few years ago they did kill all the while in play effects, which more directly were like, hey, only if this is in play does this effect trigger. Those got removed from the game. For anyone who is too new for that rules change, this is probably around like 2022, I would guess, maybe 2021. At some point, there are a lot of cards like Merchant Guild and Haggler and Highway and Groundskeeper, where like Groundskeeper said like, while this is in play, if you gain a victory card, plus one victory point, something to that effect. So it used to be if you played a throne room on a groundskeeper, you would get the plus one card, plus one action twice. But you'd still only get 1 point because there's only one groundskeeper in play. And so, like, throne rooms, like Haggler, or throne rooms or King's Courts and stuff on a Haggler or a groundskeeper wouldn't double the effect that you're trying to double because the effect only counted the number of them in play. So they worked worse with throne rooms, but they were better with ways because, for example, you could play a Haggler as Way of the Pig, to cantrip it. And then because it used to be below the line text that said, while this is in play, when you gain a card, gain a cheaper card or whatever. So you used to be able to like uh, play those as ways and still get their effects. So like Way of the Owl Merchant Guild would have been like a really strong synergy. Um, but people mixed up the while and play effects all the time, and so they changed it, I think, to make it simpler. And while I was saying that, somebody won this game. It appears eenzian has won the game, uh, which now is going to make me go check what's the final score. All right, a 3-3 final score. Uh, which I think, yeah, still leaves eenzian in first, but is putting Skumpy closer to equity and hopefully staying out of the range of demotion. That's the match.